First off, philosophy is a confession.
You wake up in a silent room. No footsteps, no messages, no one calling your name. The house hasn't changed, but something inside you has. The silence isn't peace anymore, it's loneliness. And it cuts deeper than any noise ever could. People don't talk about this often. And maybe that's because the truth is just too hard to face. The truth is, you can grow old and find yourself entirely, completely alone. Your children might live in other cities, or they're simply caught up in their own chaos, trying to survive. Your partner, the one you built your life with, may be gone lost to time or circumstance. Your friends, the ones who knew the old stories, may have passed on or drifted away, and here you are, sitting at the end of a long road, wondering, what now? This isn't just some abstract psychological idea. This is real. This is the confrontation with the void. And it's one of the most terrifying things a human being can face, the realization that the world you once held together, piece by piece, has moved on without you. But listen to me and listen carefully. This is not the end number. This is the beginning of a different kind of truth, a deeper one, a brutal one, but also a redemptive one. Because in that silence, you are finally forced to confront yourself. And within that confrontation, if you are brave enough to endure it, you can become something far more extraordinary than you ever were before. You see, aging is not the decaying of the body, it is the refinement of the soul, but only if you let it be. Most people, when they feel alone in old age, they start to wither psychologically. Their self-worth begins to dissolve. They tell themselves, I'm not needed anymore, or my life has passed me by. They sit in that chair near the window and stare out like prisoners in their own homes. And bit by bit, they begin to vanish internally first and then externally. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, that path is a choice. What I want to offer you today are three specific things you must do when you grow old and are left alone. Not as a way to numb the pain, but to face it, to grow through it, and to become worthy of your own existence again. And if you listen, really listen, what I'm about to say could reshape the rest of your life. The first thing you must do is this. You must make peace with the silence. And I don't mean tolerate it. I mean befriend it. You have to recognize that the silence around you is no longer your enemy. It is your teacher. When you're younger, the noise of the world keeps you moving. The kids need dinner. Your job demands your time. The dog barks. The phone rings. You're pulled in every direction. And without even noticing, you avoid the very thing that would have shown you who you are, the quiet. But now, the world has gone quiet. And you're faced with something terrifying your own inner voice. And that voice, if left ignored long enough, becomes bitter. It becomes resentful. It whispers things like, why doesn't anyone care about me anymore? Or maybe I don't matter. But if you truly listen to it, not to its complaints, but to what lies beneath them, you'll begin to uncover something much more profound. The silence is not there to torment you. It's there to reveal you. Take a notebook. Sit in that silence. Write. Think. Remember who you were, who you still are, because you haven't vanished. You've just stopped hearing yourself amid the chaos. Now, with the silence pressing in, it's time to hear again. And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover that the most interesting conversations of your life have yet to be had with yourself. And that leads us to the second thing. This one is even harder. You must take responsibility for something, anything, especially now. Because the moment you relinquish responsibility, you die psychologically, you collapse. And that's not a fate anyone deserves. In youth, responsibility is often forced on us. Kids, career, finances. But in old age, no one demands it of you anymore. And that's a tragedy. Because the psychological need for responsibility doesn't disappear with age. In fact, it becomes even more necessary. You need to wake up in the morning and feel that something, any, depends on you. Maybe it's a garden. Maybe it's a daily walk where you pick up litter along your street. Maybe it's a phone call every Tuesday to someone who's lonelier than you. You find something to serve, something small, something real. Don't believe the lie that you have nothing left to give. That's poisonous thinking. You have wisdom, you have experience, you've suffered, you've endured things younger people can't even fathom. That makes you valuable beyond measure, but only if you choose to act on it. Responsibility gives structure to suffering. It gives your days shape. It transforms I'm alone into I'm needed. And you need that more than anything else. Now, the third thing you must do when you're old and alone is perhaps the most spiritually demanding. You must forgive, not because everyone deserves it, but because you do. In old age, we carry ghosts, regrets, bitterness, wounds that never closed. Maybe it's the child who doesn't call anymore. Maybe it's the friend who betrayed you. Maybe it's your own failures. And all of that pain hardens over time. It calcifies and it begins to define your character without you even realizing it. You become bitter. You start to expect disappointment. You start to look for it. You interpret every silence as rejection, every absence as abandonment. And slowly you isolate yourself, not because no one loves you, but because your pain told you they couldn't. But listen, you have the power to release that pain. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. You don't have to excuse the wrongs that were done. But you can say, I will not let this define the last chapter of my life. Forgiveness doesn't mean you agree with the past. It means you're done letting it poison your present. And you need to let it not for them, but for you. Because if you don't, you become a prisoner to what was. And this life, the little that remains, becomes nothing more than an echo of all the things you never got over. Is that what you want? Or do you want something better? Something noble? Do you want to walk into the twilight of your life with your shoulders back, with your head held high, knowing that even in the absence of applause or recognition, you became someone worth becoming? That's the challenge of old age. It's not about retirement or pensions or bingo games or how many cruises you can afford. It's about how much courage you have left. Can you stare into the silence and see not emptiness, but depth? Can you shoulder the weight of responsibility even when no one is asking you to? Can you forgive not because it's easy, but because it's right? These are not small tasks, but you are not a small person. You've survived too much, lost too much, loved too deeply to live out the rest of your years in psychological decline. That's not a worthy end. That's not what you were made for. You were made to endure. You were made to confront the void. And even when the world has stopped asking anything of you, you can still ask something of yourself. Stand up, straighten your spine, walk into the next day, not waiting for someone to save you, but choosing to be your own redeemer. And let me say this before I go. You're not as alone as you think. There are others, thousands, millions, even feeling the exact same weight you feel. Watching this, searching for some spark. You are not the only one carrying this pain. You wake up one morning and your body doesn't quite move the way it used to. You glance at your hands and notice the wrinkles deepening, the skin thinning like fragile parchment. The mirror doesn't lie. 70 years or more of living stare back at you. And if you're not careful, you might begin to believe the lie that everything meaningful is now behind you. But that's a terrible mistake. In truth, some of the most profound peace, some of the deepest joy can emerge only when you've let go of what no longer serves you. And the tragedy is, many people carry burdens they should have discarded decades ago. The weight of these things isn't just emotional. It's physical, psychological, and spiritual. If you don't make peace with them now, they will rob you of the very thing you're yearning for, a peaceful and meaningful old age. You see, the idea that peace and happiness in old age just happen naturally is one of the most insidious falsehoods we've been fed. It doesn't come automatically. It takes work, conscious decision-making, discipline, and above all, courage. The courage to let go. Not to accumulate more, but to subtract what has become dead weight. It's not about gaining more knowledge or wealth or admiration. It's about throwing away, discarding, purifying. And this isn't some ascetic philosophy either. It's deeply psychological. Jung talked about the integration of the shadow in the second half of life. That means coming to terms with who you are, facing what you avoided, and finally releasing what no longer serves the soul. Let me tell you something that might sound strange. After 70, the real work begins. And if you do it properly, there's more richness in these years than in any amount of youthful energy or ambition. Because now you have perspective. But you use it only if you lean into it. So let me walk you through 5 things you must throw away to truly live a peaceful and happy life past 70. And I don't mean these metaphorically. I mean this as directly as anything I've ever said. You must let these things die so that something else in you can live. The first is resentment. This one is deadly. It's so corrosive, it can ruin an entire life without ever making a sound. Resentment is the silent killer of peace. It's the festering wound that never scabs over because you keep picking at it, mentally replaying the slights, the injustices, the betrayals. You think you're preserving a sense of justice, but really, you're poisoning yourself. When you're 70 or older, you've had enough time to collect a whole museum of resentments. But ask yourself, what has it given you? Has it brought you peace? Has it made the people who wronged you suffer, or has it just left you bitter and lonely? You must throw it away. And it's not easy, I know that, especially when you've been legitimately wronged. But carrying that pain as if it's your identity, that's a prison, and the door's been open the whole time. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that freedom lies on the other side of letting go. Second, throw away the illusion of control. Now this one stings, because many people spend their entire lives trying to manage, manipulate, and control their surroundings, their children, their spouses, even themselves. And control in its proper place is essential. You want to control your habits, your reactions, your responsibilities. But after 70, clinging to control over people, outcomes, or time itself, it's futile. And worse, it's exhausting. Let go of it. Allow life to unfold. You've planted seeds for decades. Now is the time to watch them grow. Or not. You can't force it anymore. And trying to will only frustrate you and alienate others. There's deep peace in surrender. Not the kind that implies giving up, but the kind that acknowledges the reality of change. The Stoics called it amor fati, love of fate. Embrace what comes. Relinquish your death grip on the need for everything to go your way. That tight grasp will suffocate the joy that's trying to find you. Third, you must throw away comparison. You look around and see people your age who seem happier, more accomplished, wealthier, more loved, and it stings, especially when you feel like you did everything right. Or maybe you look back at your younger self with longing, even envy. But comparison is a trap. It's a distortion. At 70 and beyond, your life is not supposed to mirror someone else's. It's not a race. It never was. You're not supposed to be anything other than what you are right now. And that doesn't mean complacency, it means authenticity. True peace comes when you finally stop measuring yourself against standards that were never yours to begin with. And that's hard, because we're conditioned to compare from a very young age. But listen, the soul doesn't thrive in competition. It thrives in purpose. And purpose isn't found in looking sideways. It's found in looking inward. Fourth, throw away perfectionism. Oh, this one's sneaky. You think it's virtuous. You think you're just holding yourself to a high standard. But in truth, it's a kind of tyranny, a refusal to accept the beauty in your own humanity. And at 70, that tyranny becomes unbearable. You're no longer who you once were. Your body changes. Your memory might falter. Your energy declines. And if you cling to the idea that you must do everything flawlessly, you set yourself up for constant disappointment. Perfectionism robs you of joy, of spontaneity, of creativity. You have to embrace the imperfect now, the messy, the incomplete, because life isn't perfect and neither are you. And there's something deeply beautiful about that. The Japanese have a term, wabi-sabi, which refers to the beauty of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. Your life, especially now, is a reflection of that beauty. Celebrate it. And finally, perhaps the most painful of all, throw away the need to be needed. That one cuts deep, doesn't it? Because for many people, their entire identity has been built around service, around being useful, around sacrifice. And those things are noble. But when the children grow, when the job ends, when people stop calling as often, you begin to wonder, what am I now? If no one needs me, do I still matter? But let me tell you, Your value does not hinge on being needed. Your value is intrinsic. You matter because you are. And in this phase of life, the task is not to be needed, but to be present, to be wise, to be... The gift you offer now isn't your labor or your sacrifice, it's your presence. Your experience, your ability to witness life without trying to fix or control it. That is a profoundly rare and healing presence in this chaotic world. And it's only available when you stop trying to derive your worth from being indispensable. So what do you do instead? Once you throw these things away, what takes their place? The answer is not in more doing, but in deeper being. You cultivate presence. You seek beauty. You engage in reflection, not rumination. You give not out of obligation, but out of joy. You forgive not because others deserve it, but because you do. You surrender not to fate, but to the deeper rhythm of life that has carried you this far and is not done with you yet. There are people who find more happiness at 80 than they ever did at 40. Why? Because they finally stopped trying to be someone they're not. They finally laid down the heavy baggage. They finally realized that what matters most is not achievement, but meaning. Not admiration, but connection. Not youth, but wisdom. And the paradox is, once you throw away these burdens, life becomes lighter. You smile more. You can sleep better. You notice things again. The way sunlight dances on the table, the sound of a child laughing in the park, the texture of old wood beneath your hand. That's life. That's peace, but it requires letting go. So I ask you now, what are you still holding on to? What ancient bitterness still festers in your soul? What illusion do you still cling to, thinking it will give you control or safety? What comparisons still torment you in the quiet hours? What part of you still demands perfection or insists on being needed to feel alive? Identify it, name it, and then, with every ounce of courage you have left, throw it away. You are not too old to change. You are not too old to begin again. You are not too old to heal, but you must act now, before more years slip by under the shadow of these burdens. There is still so much life ahead, even now, but only if you make room for it. So do something radical. Take a piece of paper and write down these 5 things: resentment, control, comparison, perfectionism, the need to be needed, and then burn it. Literally or metaphorically, but let it go. And when you do, something astonishing will happen. Peace will come rushing in to fill the space, not the peace of passivity, but the peace of clarity, of presence, of grace. You've carried so much for so long. Isn't it time to put it down? Let this be the day you begin again, not by adding more, but by subtracting what no longer belongs. And in doing so, you may just discover the most peaceful, the most profound, the most beautiful chapter of your life has only just begun. You wake up suddenly, and it's dark. Not just nighttime dark. It's a particular kind of still, heavy darkness that feels like it holds its breath. You glance at the clock. 3:07 a.m. Again, 3rd time this week. And you're left staring at the ceiling, heart beating just a little too loudly, wondering, why always around this hour? Well, I'll tell you something, it's not random. And it's not just aging. That 3 a.m. awakening, it holds meaning, deep, psychological meaning, biological meaning. It's your body and your mind trying to tell you something you've likely ignored for years, perhaps even decades. Now let's talk about this honestly, about what's really going on when older adults, people in the later stages of life, find themselves jolted awake in the dead of night, staring into a silence that feels deafening. You see, our bodies are machines, but not in the cold, mechanical way people often assume. They're ancient biological instruments, evolved over millions of years to respond to subtle cues, danger, fear, unresolved conflict, even existential dread. And at 3 a.m., when the world is silent and your defenses are down, those signals rise to the surface. For many older adults, waking at this hour isn't just about disrupted circadian rhythms, though that's certainly part of it. The brain's production of melatonin, the sleep hormone, declines with age. Cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes early in the morning. And so physiologically, you're primed to wake. But that's only the beginning. That's just the surface. The real issue lies deeper. In the quiet of that early morning hour, all the things you've kept at bay during your waking life, the regrets, the missed opportunities, the unresolved traumas, they rise like ghosts. At 3 a.m., there is nowhere left to hide from yourself. A man once told me that as he aged, the nights became heavier. I don't sleep deeply anymore, he said. It's not just my body, it's my soul that keeps waking me up. And he was right. That's the part we don't talk about. The spiritual component of waking, the psychological confrontation. Because as we age, we don't just slow down, we start reviewing, we start reckoning. And that reckoning, it doesn't respect your sleep schedule. So you wake at 3 a.m. because your psyche is stirring. It's trying to integrate your life story, all the chaos, the triumphs, the failures, and it's trying to sort them before it's too late because time is running out and you know it. You feel it in your bones. I talk to many older people who struggle with sleep. They often think it's just the inevitable decline of age, but more often than not, it's something else. Anxiety, fear, loneliness, even guilt. The kind of emotions that can only be heard when the noise of the world dies down. And that moment, right there at 3 a.m., is when your subconscious seizes the opportunity to whisper the truth. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine your life as a novel. Each day is a sentence, each year a chapter. In your youth, you're busy writing, scribbling forward with haste, rarely looking back. But when you grow old, when your hands start to tremble slightly and your joints ache in the morning, you begin reading the book backward. You start flipping through the pages, reading scenes, analyzing what you wrote decades ago. And sometimes what you read is painful. Waking at 3 a.m. is your mind going back to a particularly difficult chapter, one you didn't resolve. Maybe you lost someone and never grieved properly. Maybe you betrayed someone and buried the memory. Or maybe it's not guilt at all. Maybe it's longing, a desire to do more with the time you have left. When I speak to clients in their 60s or 70s, they often confess to me their deepest regrets in these offhand moments. They'll say things like, I should have told my daughter I was proud of her. Or, I never apologized to my brother before he died. And these thoughts, they don't come when you're busy with errands or watching television. They come when you're alone, when your defenses are down, when the clock reads 3 o'clock IMM. So we're forced to confront the painful truth. Waking up in the middle of the night isn't the problem. It's a symptom. The problem is what you're carrying, what you're avoiding, what you've pushed so far down, it's only safe to look at it when everything else is silent. But here's where it gets more tragic. We live in a culture that treats sleep as mechanical. Take a pill, they say, buy a better mattress. And sure, those things might help temporarily, but they don't address the root. Because the real solution isn't in blocking out the wake-up call, it's in answering it. And this is hard. Facing yourself is hard. At any age, but especially later in life, when the stakes feel higher, when mortality isn't an abstract concept anymore, when the friends you grew up with are starting to disappear and your own body is betraying you in little subtle ways. I once had a man in his 80s weep in my office. He said, I don't know why I'm crying. I just wake up every night at 3 a.m. and I feel like I've missed something. And my God, the pain in his voice. It wasn't just about insomnia. It was about loss, about unprocessed emotion. And more than anything, it was about a hunger for meaning. You see, people think the elderly are finished growing, that after a certain age, your psychological development is complete. But that's false. You don't stop becoming. You don't stop wrestling with who you are just because your hair turns white. In fact, that's often when the real wrestling begins. So what does waking at 3 a.m. mean? It means you're still alive enough to feel discomfort. It means your psyche is still striving toward integration. It means you still care, even if it hurts, even if it comes wrapped in anxiety or sorrow. But there's hope here. There's tremendous hope. Because when you recognize these wake-ups for what they are, a call to process, to reckon, to understand, you begin to use them. Instead of resisting them, you lean in, you ask, what is it that I'm supposed to face? What lesson have I ignored for too long? And if you're brave, you listen, not with your ears, but with your heart. And let's not forget the body in all this. You need to tend to it as well. Yes, your sleep cycle changes with age. The brain produces less melatonin. You may experience more light sleep, more interruptions, but this doesn't mean you are doomed to nights of restless agony. On the contrary, if you align your habits, light exposure during the day, physical activity, proper nutrition, and limiting artificial blue light, you improve your odds. You respect the temple that carries your soul. Still, physical fixes will never be enough if the soul is unsettled. You must seek meaning in the wakefulness. That's where the transformation lies. You see, the point of life isn't to be free from suffering, it's to carry it nobly. And these wake-ups, they are the perfect symbol of that. A moment of vulnerability, a test of courage, a quiet invitation to do the psychological work most avoid until it's too late. So to those who wake at 3 a.m., don't numb it, don't ignore it, and for God's sake, don't believe it's meaningless, because it might just be the most honest part of your day, and it might just be the place where healing begins. That's not something to suppress, that's something to revere. Now, if this speaks to you, if you've found yourself awake night after night, wondering why, you owe it to yourself to respond. Don't just distract yourself with television or medication. Instead, journal, reflect, pray, if that's meaningful to you. Talk to someone. Speak the truth you've hidden, even if only to yourself, because the silence of 3 a.m. can be terrifying, but it can also be redemptive. You don't have to keep carrying the past like a weight you can't drop. You can confront it, you can integrate it, and maybe you can find peace, not only in the day, but in the night as well. So ask yourself the hard question. What is it exactly that's waking you? I mean, if you're brave enough to answer honestly, you might just find the beginning of a new chapter, even at 75 or 85 or beyond. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Start a conversation. And don't just watch, act. Confront the darkness with your eyes wide open, because the hour is late, but it's not too late. Not yet. The clock reads 3. Oh, clock, I am. Maybe that's your invitation. There comes a moment, usually in the quiet of the night, long after the children have grown and the house has gone silent, when you realize that most of your life is behind you. And that's not a tragedy, it's a sacred thing. But with that realization comes something sharp, something almost painful. You begin to see with brutal clarity how much of your life was given away, how many pieces of your soul you handed out, hoping someone would hold them gently, and how often they didn't. In old age, it's not just the body that becomes fragile, it's the spirit. And there are things you carry in your heart now, memories and truths, scars and longings, that were never meant to be shared casually. Because if you give them to the wrong person, you don't just lose trust, you lose yourself. Protected, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, out of a hard-earned understanding that not everyone deserves access to your soul. I've spoken to hundreds of people, men and women, well into their twilight years, and again, I hear the same regret. I wish I hadn't told them that. And the truth is, what you share in your later years can either preserve your dignity or unravel it. It can either build legacy or sow confusion and pain. I knew a man, let's call him Arthur. He was 73, a retired teacher, a gentle soul with eyes that had seen too much. He lived alone in a modest house filled with books and old photographs, and Arthur had a tendency to talk too much. Not in a foolish way, no. In fact, he was quite brilliant, but he had never quite learned that some pain doesn't need to be witnessed, to be real, just to be real. He thought that sharing would lighten the burden, and in some cases it did. But one day, he confided something deeply personal to a new acquaintance, someone who seemed kind, understanding, someone who listened. And weeks later, that same story, his private pain was used against him, twisted, mocked, whispered through their small town like gossip in a schoolyard. Arthur stopped going to the local cafe after that. He stopped smiling as much, and though he never said it, I could see it in him. A piece of him died that day. You must understand something profound here. People often assume that openness equals strength, and in some ways it does. Vulnerability is a gift when offered in the right context, but in old age, it's no longer about proving how open you can be. It's about discerning who has earned the right to see the inner architecture of your being. There are 5 things, 5 deeply personal realms of your life that should remain sacred in your later years. And no, I'm not talking about hiding who you are. I'm talking about protecting the parts of you that took a lifetime to build. You don't need validation for your story anymore. You don't need permission to feel the things you feel. What you need is peace, and you get that by becoming a careful gatekeeper of your truth. The first is your deepest regrets, because regrets, you see, are not simple admissions of failure. They are emotional landmines. When you share them carelessly, you allow others to redefine your story, to label you, to diminish your complexity to a single moment of weakness. And let me tell you something about people. They are quick to remember your worst day and slow to recall your best. Arthur once told someone he regretted not standing up to his abusive father, and that became the only thing people saw in him after that, a man defined by a lack of courage. But what they didn't know was that he had spent a lifetime teaching young boys how to be brave, how to speak, how to carry themselves. That regret fueled a legacy. But he shared it, and they never saw him the same again. Don't make that mistake. Let your regrets teach you. Let them refine you. But don't hand them out like tokens. Second, never share the full depth of your financial situation. Whether you're wealthy or struggling, money has a way of distorting relationships. Once people know exactly what you have, you're no longer a person, you're a resource, especially in old age. I've seen families torn apart by inheritance disputes, friends turned into predators, trust destroyed by envy. You want to help others? Fine. Be generous. But don't open the books to everyone. You are not obligated to explain how you've survived, how you've saved, or what you plan to leave behind. That knowledge, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon. Third, your pain. Your pain. Yes, I know that's controversial. And I'm not saying suffer in silence, but hear me out. Not everyone who listens cares, and not everyone who cares deserves to know. Some people collect stories of pain not to empathize, but to control, to manipulate, to feed their sense of moral superiority. I once met a woman, Elaine, who shared the details of her grief after her son's suicide with a support group. And within months, one of the members began telling her story at events without her consent, turning her private sorrow into a public fable. Her pain became currency for someone else's status. That is a form of theft, and you must protect yourself from it. Fourth, your future plans, because in old age, your dreams become delicate things. They're no longer grand schemes, they're intimate hopes. Things like taking a trip, finishing a book, reconciling with an estranged child. And when you share those plans with people who lack imagination or compassion, they will mock them, dismiss them, drain them of meaning. I've seen older people abandon their final dreams simply because someone scoffed at them. You're too old for that, they'd say, and the dream would die right there. Don't let anyone rob you of that last spark. Hold your future close, it still matters. And finally, never share your resentments. Bitterness is a fire, and when you speak it aloud, it grows. I've watched old men poison their remaining years by giving voice to every grudge, every slight. It consumes them. You might think that speaking your resentment will free you from it, but unless you're speaking to someone truly wise, someone who can hold it without judgment, without feeding it, it will only deepen the wound. Resentment is a demon that wants to live. Don't feed it with your voice. Instead, turn it into wisdom, into boundaries, into silence. That is strength. And you might ask, what then am I supposed to share? Share your love, share your curiosity, share your humor, your stories, your music, your photographs, your memories. Share the warmth that remains in you, because that is the part of you that gives others hope. But guard the rest, because you've earned the right to keep it. Old age is not a slow descent into irrelevance. It's a narrowing of focus, a sharpening, like a blade honed over years of use. You don't need the whole world to understand you. You need only a few good people, and even then, they don't need to know everything. Let them discover you in pieces. Let them earn that access. You are not a confession booth. You are a temple, and temples do not open their doors to everyone who passes by. So if you've reached that stage in life, if your hair is gray, or your back aches a little more than it used to. Understand this. Your power is not gone. It's just quieter now. But quieter doesn't mean weaker. In fact, the quiet power of a guarded soul is one of the most formidable forces in the world. It says, I know who I am. I know what I've survived. And I choose what I share, not because I'm hiding, but because I finally understand the value of my voice. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, if you've ever watched someone misuse something you told them in confidence, then you already know what I'm talking about. So let this video be your reminder, your anchor. That silence can be a form of wisdom, that you don't owe anyone the full story, and that what you choose to protect in your old age may just be what saves your soul. So now I ask you, what will you guard? What pieces of yourself have you been giving away too easily? Think about that, and if this spoke to you, share it. Not because I need the views, but because someone out there, someone with gray in their hair and pain in their heart, needs to be reminded that it's not too late to protect what's left. And if you're younger, if old age still feels far away, listen anyway. Because the habits you build now will define who you become. Don't wait until you've been broken to start protecting yourself. Start today and build a life that ends in dignity, not regret. Do something. Write a comment, tell your story, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Take one small step to reclaim your voice. Because you're not done, you're not finished, and you are absolutely not alone. You still have something to offer this world, and the world still needs you. So act like...
If you guys made it this far, I appreciate it. Please remember to like and subscribe if this is the type of content you like, motivational type, inspirational stuff. Thank you again. WTJ Knowledge Drops on all social media, and you can subscribe on YouTube and Patreon. Thank you so much again. I love you guys.